Today's an editing day, so naturally I keep sneaking outside because it's only 100 degrees right now. Well, like 102 degrees right now. And I know that sounds crazy, but here in the little desert, as long as it's not 115, 120 degrees, it feels amazing. Chilly even. I think I shivered a little. But I'm gonna show you some of my favorite things popping off in the garden right now. I would like to know that this garden update was filmed 3 days after the last garden update, but the reason I'm updating you so frequently is because things are growing so rapidly in Serendipity and I'm amazed by it, and I just want to make sure that I'm documenting these little bits and pieces because during the summer my garden was scorched, my garden was nothing. And now seeing it come back to life makes me feel a type of joy that is indescribable. So I want to make sure I share this progress with you. First up, look at the tropicals over here. This is a dwarf Cavendish banana. And look at all the pops. This was Kiki's dwarf Cavendish banana baby, which has now turned into this beauty. And it hasn't fruited yet, but I am thinking that it's going to. Next to that is my atemoya. I don't know if this one made it. Probably not. It probably dried up, which is unfortunate because that was a very expensive tree, but that's fine. I'll replace it with something else. Up here I have loofah, which is finally starting to produce and flower. Oh my goodness, I'm so happy about that. This is the soursop tree that was a seedling once upon a time, and look at it. It's beautiful, looking super lush. And then right next to it is a Carmen avocado, and this one was not going to make it. It had actually started dying back significantly, so I topped it off and then it started growing back. And I made sure to top it off still above the graft so that we still get the Carmen variety right there. I also pruned back some blueberries recently because they were going crazy and they're starting to push out new growth, which you can see right there. This is a little Cotto avocado, which is also looking so beautiful. This is the entrance to my garden, and this vine right here is called Star Jasmine, and it puts out these flowers that look like white pinwheels, and they're so beautiful. And all summer long it was just scorching. You can see some of the older leaves right here, like it was completely frying in place. And then as soon as the shade cloth went up, it started growing so much. Like all of this is brand new growth. You can tell by the color of the leaves, they're really light all the way up to like right here. So that was awesome. These are some pumpkins clearly taking over this garden bed, and soon they'll probably want to take over the rest of the garden. This is coral vine. It's growing several feet in 1 week, so I need to keep tying them up. Coral vine is supposed to handle the heat pretty well, but most of the summer it barely grew. It was tiny, and then as soon as the shade cloth went up, it started growing like crazy. This is one rosel plant, which also had barely grown, and now it's thriving. But I do regret putting it here. It grows massive. It will take over the entire 6-foot long bed, but it's fine. Maybe the pumpkins can grow a bit. I take that back. I don't actually mean it, because rosel hibiscus or sorrel or flor de Jamaica is a fantastic plant. It grows huge. It can get very tall. It can get very wide, and it can most certainly take over the entire garden bed. However, one thing it is not is sturdy. This is the type of plant that can flop over very easily. If there's really strong winds, it can break off some branches, or if there's too much weight on the branches, they can easily become damaged. And I think a big reason for that is that the stem and the branches are very fibrous. The actual trunk of this plant can be processed and used sort of like jute to make textiles. I don't know how to do that, but I read that online, so I thought that was pretty cool. And then the calyxes that it makes after the flower blooms are used for drinks like Jamaica or sorrel drink. They can be used to make jams. They have a taste reminiscent of cranberries, but it's also different. It's very tart, it's a little bit sour, and it's very delicious. I grew up drinking it when I was a kid in Jamaica, which is an iced agua fresca. How do you say agua fresca? And even the leaves are edible. They have a very sour taste to them, and you can use them in savory dishes. The plant as a whole is really cool, and I often get asked where I bought the seeds. I bought them on Amazon, and I have them linked in the description box. And if you live somewhere where it's really hot like Arizona, you can just direct sow them, or you can also transplant them. Just start them in trays and then transplant them out into the yard or into the garden. So it's a plant I highly recommend, and definitely one of my favorites. This is my pepper tree, and look how beautiful it looks. All of the new growth looks stunning. There's flowers everywhere, and there's also peppers everywhere, which is good because I'm running out of the other dried ones that I had. My mom's roses are blooming again, and this is crazy to me because I would have expected a couple blooms come fall, and we're not in fall yet here. It's still pretty hot here compared to other places, but look at the blooms that it's pushing out, and there's buds everywhere. Oh my goodness, these roses look beautiful. This trellis, if you guys look back at the videos, had a ton of dead dry foliage, and now it is covered in vines again. And not just vines, but also Armenian cucumbers everywhere. You can see a couple of them right here. Some of the Armenian cucumbers can be harvested now, so whenever we are making any sort of dish, I like coming out to the garden and picking them fresh. But I'm also trying to leave a couple on the vine because I just feel like that helps to preserve them a little bit longer instead of bringing them indoors and then putting them in the fridge or leaving them on the counter and having them either dry out or get a little bit softer. And the reason I'm trying to save some of them is because we're gonna be going on a trip soon, and I'll show you that. And one of the snacks that I want to bring with me is Armenian cucumbers that we can snack on while we're out and about. So I'm gonna be harvesting the majority of them then. But in the meantime, I'm just harvesting them whenever we actually need them for either a meal or a side dish or whatever it is that we're cooking. Recently, I planted carrots and they seem to be popping up. I'm just keeping it covered a little bit longer because these get more sun, and that way a few more can pop up if they want to. Usually I have trouble getting carrots to germinate because the soil dries out very quickly, the seeds are very small, and usually I sow them closer to the top of the soil. And because it's still really hot in the low desert, the shade cloth does help to keep things a little bit cooler, but we still get a lot of dry winds coming through, so containers dry out very, very quickly. So one thing that I did to help me get the carrots to germinate was taking pieces of painter's paper. I bought it at Harbor Freight for like $5 for this roll. I cut out circles, I place them over the seeds that I sowed, and then I just spray them down with water. And a couple times a day I come out and I just give them a quick spray down. That way the soil stays moist a little bit longer and I get better germination. And then once almost all the seeds have popped up, I'm going to stop placing the paper on them and I'm going to thin them out and just leave a couple in the container. That way I get a good crop of carrots, hopefully, fingers crossed, because in the garden beds, I have not had the best luck growing carrots, so I figured I'd try it out in containers. That way I knew exactly where I had planted them and I could keep an eye on them and make sure that they didn't dry out until they finally germinated and got big enough to where I could just back off on the watering and let the carrots do their thing. Look how beautiful this trellis looks. There are melons dangling everywhere, and by everywhere I literally mean everywhere. On this section alone I have about 4 or 5 that I have trellised up, but there's countless others that are still forming, like that one right there. But if you look over here, there's a couple hiding in place, and that makes me feel so happy. I also have a bunch more over here, and look how massive these guys are. Oh, they're so pretty. This bed has a bunch of eggplant just getting really, really large. And it also has other melon vines, which I need to trellis up. I've been trying to come out here and do this regularly, but recently I've just been really busy. Look at these beans climbing all the way up the trellis and going even higher than that. They look beautiful. I also have some okra over here looking stunning. Down here I have a bunch more fall crops that I'm going to be transplanting probably this weekend. And then this bed right here is full of tomatoes. It has a bunch of dwarf tomatoes, which are kind of hard to see because this pumpkin is going kind of crazy, so I need to trellis this up. I think I should clarify that sometimes I say that I can't trellis up the pumpkin vines because they're too heavy for the trellises, and other times I mention how I need to start trellising some of the vines up. And the reason for that is that in some beds I planted pumpkins of different varieties, but some of them are bigger, heavier pumpkins. But I also planted some varieties in other beds that are a lot smaller, that are perfect for trellising up vertically without worrying about them damaging or messing up my trellises or not having enough support. And the reason I'm trying out so many different varieties is because unfortunately, up until this point, I have not had any success with pumpkins thus far. I've wanted to grow some ever since I started gardening, but for some reason I haven't been able to keep them happy enough to produce a pumpkin, like an orange pumpkin. I've been able to produce other types of summer squash and winter squash, but I want the orange pumpkins, like the Halloween style pumpkins. Even if it's just like a baking style of pumpkin, I just want a pumpkin that looks like a pumpkin. I don't know what kind of melon this is because I can't find the right tag, But this trellis is also full of melons, and these are a really good size. Look at that. It's not a watermelon, it's like just a melon of some sort. It's really, really pretty. Look. And that is the little garden update for now. There's a lot of stuff to see there. Okay, it looks like I just harvested my first lime. I was not expecting to. It's starting to turn. Was that a fly? Why did it look so big? Okay. I just touched this lime and it totally fell off. It smells really good. Let's bring it inside.